Okay guys, we're going to make an outhouse today with Google SketchUp 8. When you open SketchUp, it's going to look like this, and basically just hit start using SketchUp down there at the bottom. The window's expandable, so I'll make it full screen. And what I always do is just click this person and delete them. However, that person keeps things in scale, so you know if you're going to build something that's really tall, you'll need to make it a lot bigger than this person. She represents about 5 feet, 5 or 6 feet or so. Okay, here are your basic tools. We're going to use the rectangle tool to start with, and if you just hover over the corner here, click and drag out, you can drag out a square, and that little line in the middle tells you that it's a square, and you can see that it's indicated with a little sign there. Next tool we're going to use is the push-pull tool. You hover over it, you see you get halftone. You just have to click and drag up, and you can see as I click and drag, it actually moves the screen for me. Use your scroll wheel on your mouse rather, to zoom out. This is the orbit tool. You can click and drag and move around the outhouse and get a sense for how big it's going to be. Scale doesn't matter too much right now, but we don't want to make something that's absolutely enormous. Mainly because that will bog down the program. Just so you know, you have a tape measure tool right here, and you can measure the surface. And I can see that's an 18-foot outhouse. Quite big. It's okay for what we're doing today. However, I would suggest scaling it down in the future. Okay, next tool is the pencil. And to draw with this, you don't click and drag. You just click once to start and click again to finish. You'll see here it says midpoint. SketchUp does something called inferencing. So basically when you hover over the middle of a line segment, it tells you where the midpoint is. Mainly because perspective gets in the way. This visually looks shorter from this distance to here because of perspective or simulated perspective. So you want to use these inferencing points. They'll be your friend. Click on it here, and you can see that it turns red. It's telling me that it's moving along the same axis as the red axis, and then it's telling me here that I'm going to click at the midpoint. What you'll notice is that you get a line if you hover right over top of it, smack dab in the middle. Okay, the next tool we have is the move tool, and you can move surfaces or lines or edges. And I'm going to take this edge, I'm going to click it once, let go of the button, move it up, and you can see it tells me on blue axis. So I'm going to raise the roof here and click it again. Not a lot of tools you use click and drag in SketchUp. Actually, a lot of them are just click, release, that sort of thing. So you should have a general idea of a roof here. When you slice and dice shapes or forms like this, like I'm doing with the pencil here, you wind up making new planes and surfaces that you can manipulate. In this case, I'm just going to crop off the roof from the rest of the form, and I'm actually going to give it kind of a overhang. Hotkey for orbit is O, and the hotkey for the pencil tool is, or the line tool is, L. Here I'm going to try and finish this, so using inferencing and knowing that I'm going along the green axis now, I can be pretty sure that I made this line go all the way around the form, which I did. Use the push-pull tool here to push in the sides just a little bit. Vantage point means everything in SketchUp. You're going to find that if you can't tell what you're doing, like I don't know how far in I pushed that, you might need to orbit underneath or zoom in. Okay, it looks pretty good. This outhouse needs a door. By the way, the hand tool, hotkey H, allows you to scroll side to side or up and down. A couple ways to do it. You can use the line tool, or you can just use another rectangle tool. I'm going to click and pull out a door. You see that? I'm going to go back here. By the way, Command Z, just like in Photoshop and Illustrator, is your way of undoing. If I just, before I click again, it says on face. I can be sure that this is going to be drawn on the face, and you're going to see how that becomes important in the future. Maybe I'll give this door a little bit of a trim detail. Notice how it wants to stick right there. See how it's jumping back and forth? Just zoom in a little bit. Get to a good vantage point where you can see all of your door like this, because vantage point means everything. And it's not going to snap as close, so I can get kind of close with my trim here. Although I do think that maybe it's a little bit too small. I can push the door in a little bit and the trim out a little bit, just to give it a nice architectural detail. And I'm going to just, with the circle tool, gently suggest a doorknob. Okay, next tool is the arc tool, because we need to put a moon on this gable end here. So we're going to take the arc tool and see the little icon just to the right of the pencil. It tells you which point on the arc you're using. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all hover over this end point and then slowly bring it down, and you can see it says from point. So I know that the top of my moon is going to be lined up perfectly with the point here. It's called inferencing. Click once. You can see the little red dot then moves to the other end of the arc. Click again. I'm going to go up to the middle and pull out, and you can see it tells me I'm making this arc on the face, which is what I want to do. Sometimes the arc wants to jump out and move on a different axis. I'm going to do it again. Endpoint. And then slowly bring this out. It tells me I'm on the face, and I also know that by the green axis that it's showing me. And I can do one of two things. I can delete it. Command Z to undo that, or I can use the push-pull tool to push that in a little bit. Either way, aesthetically it looks, I think, pretty good. Now, if you want to move this around, you'll have to redraw it. Say you go, it's a little bit too high, it needs to be maybe over to the left or the right. You'll just have to redraw that. You can't actually select the moon now and move it. Anytime you make a new face or plane, basically it's stuck to the object, and we'll talk about that later with components. But SketchUp uses something called sticky geometry, which can be very convenient, but also really difficult at times. So in this case, once you make a shape on a surface or on a plane, it's stuck there. Okay, we need clapboard. It needs to be old. So I'm going to do this on the edge here. It needs to look old, rather, on edge. And I'm going to just click and drag out some more. Not bad. Looks like an outhouse. I should do this on the other side. I'll show you the texture tool and why we may not want to use it for what we're doing in class. If I go on this paint bucket, I can bring up colors. And of course, I can select a color and just paint a surface a certain color. But notice once you do that, now you're kind of obligated visually to paint the whole rest of this thing. And that's not really what we're after unless color is really going to communicate something about a time period specifically. If we also go to this brick here, it's going to bring up, well, we already have it here, bricks and cladding. That's what we just put on there, and I can select a certain cladding type and put that on the side there, but it doesn't give me the option to make it look old. And once again, the difference being this side I've gently suggested the materials on this outhouse, and it doesn't look strange that this has some surface to it and this doesn't. There's not a whole lot of difference. The main thing is I understand this is an old outhouse, but once you do this, everything else looks unfinished, and then you're obligated to go around and paint all the rest of your surfaces and so on. What I would say is don't put any surface treatments on, and if you really need something to be there, just in a few minutes suggest that material. Of course, we could do that for the roof, and I'll demonstrate. I come across here, and if you want to release the line, by the way, hit L. I want to release that line because I don't want that extra line there. Come across here. And I have something that looks like a roof, an old shingled roof.